الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم انصر أوليائك في غزة وفي الضفة وفي لبنان وفي اليمن وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم فرج عن عبادك في غزة، فرج عنا وعن عبادك في غزة وفي الضفة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي اليمن وفي لبنان وفي السودان وفي مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. وصلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته وإترته أجمعين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل واجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي رب العالمين. صلى وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وأزواجه وذريته برحمتك. Can China bear the white man's burden? China cannot be the main force behind the capitalist revival in the present downturn. That is the recession of 2007 and 9. The weight of China's production, consumption, and finance in global aggregate is simply not large enough. That's the first reason. Today, that is in 2009. I don't know how much has changed. I haven't looked at it recently. The weight of Chinese production, consumption, and finance in global aggregate global aggregates is simply not large enough today to enable. That's the first reason, according to the author. What his thesis is this: to play a leading role in world capitalist revival. In terms of production, consumption, and finance. It's not large enough to play a leading role. I mean, it doesn't mean that it didn't play any role. Of course, it played a crucial role in 2007-9 revival, but did it play a leading role? That's the question. Indeed, Chinese growth may itself deaccelerate due to the global recession, since China remains dependent on both exports and imports as growth stimulants because of a low technological development and distributional constraints on the expansion of domestic demand. Distributional constraint meaning inequality among regions, I guess, and other related things. Moreover, since multinationals are not state-owned, that's another reason. 1, 2. And since multinationals and not state-owned firms are the main driving force of Chinese export growth, setbacks in headquarters countries, US, Japan, Europe may reduce foreign investment in China, thus restricting the country's export growth. It's very interesting to know what has happened actually. Obviously, China has substituted to a certain extent export partners and import partners. Export-import partners have pivoted more to Russia and Africa and Iran and Central Asia, etc. But that in terms of Chinese government and its policies and its investments. Okay, this does not mean, of course, that's now backtracking some of the or making exceptions to the rule. This does not, of course, mean that China cannot play an important role in global capitalist revival. Obviously, it can, since it continues to grow at least 3 times faster than the metropolitan capitalist countries, the so-called first one, and is therefore increasingly significant absorber of surplus. 25. Surplus is in the sense that effective demand does not exist for their purchase. Chinese high growth is be sustained for a sufficiently long period to enable it to eventually replace America as the global capitalist hegemon, as America replaced Britain in the 20th century. So the question, therefore, is, can China? So that's the main question. Sufficient Chinese high growth can be sustained for sufficiently long period to enable it to eventually replace it as the global capitalist hegemon, as America replaced Britain in the 20th century. And of course, another question is whether it wants to replace, it wants to act as a global capitalist hegemon. Might be content to be just a nationalist regional superpower. There is also the question: does the party leaders seek to play a system? So does the party seek to play? So these are two questions. The most important question, actually, as far as the capitalism is concerned. And in the case of the United States, the main stimulant to development has been the growth of domestic demand. In 20th century, I guess in the late 19th century, the Chinese government recognized that increased domestic demand orientation is crucial both for growth sustenance and for reducing macroeconomic instability and sectoral sectoral imbalances. So domestic demand is important for sustenance of a long-term growth. So the main constraint on the growth of domestic consumption, especially in the types of goods that China itself produces, is increasingly unequal distribution of income and wealth. If the income and wealth is unequally distributed, and that's why not only GDP but per capita income become important. Because if unequal distribution of income, then demand, you can't sustain high demand because not enough people have money to buy those things. So unequal distribution of income and wealth leading to the concentration of purchasing power in the hands of groups with relatively high propensity to import and a high propensity to save. That's another reason. Those who have money, they are either going to import or high propensity, or they are going to save. Because obviously, how much one person or one group, a small group, can buy, propensity to save. And the footnote 26 says that this is also a major cause of relative unprofitability of state-owned firms and town and village enterprises as against foreign firms which produce mainly for the domestic market and not for exports. The post-Maoist CCP has built an absolutist capitalist state. The term is Perry Anderson's C.S. classic study of 1971. However, our conception of the absolutist state differs significantly from Perry Anderson's conception. What are the conceptions? Now we're going to talk about absolutist states. So probably we should stop here. An absolutist state. Probably the conception of absolutist state is brought in here to discuss these two issues. I think these are the most important points you should keep in mind. Domestic demand and growth sustenance and the reasons, unequal distribution, and why it cannot sustain high domestic demand, obviously in relative terms, high in relative terms. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.